Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2025 library tour. In this episode, Penguins and Zeus's Head. So the books on this bookcase were originally on the middle shelves of the bookcase that I had stacked on top of another bookcase. In my idea for that shelf was to populate it by yellow-spined penguin histories. Although I never got enough of them to make a full shelf. So they're joined by books from the publisher Head of Zeus. So many of the books on this shelf I got from Book Depository, which was a UK bookseller that shipped for free to the United States. And a year or two ago, it shuttered because its corporate overlord decided it didn't want to do it anymore, or whatever reason. So if you want to get books from the UK now, go to Blackwell's. They ship internationally for free. So anyway, let's get on to the books. So first up is The Brothers York, an English tragedy by Thomas Penn. So this is, I believe, has something to do with the Wars of the Roses, or at least the long English succession crisis at the end of the 15th century. Have not gotten around to it yet, which will be a refrain for most of the books on this bookcase. Unruly Waters, How Mountain Rivers and Monsoons Have Shaped South Asia's History by Suno Amrith. The Fall of the Ottomans, The Great War in the Middle East, 1914 to 1920 by Eugene Rogan. So this is a history of the Ottoman Empire in World War I and the subsequent collapse of the empire and the reformation of what was the Ottoman heartland as the Republic of Turkey. I'm of mixed opinion about the book. I wish the book were more centered on Turkish sources. I'm not entirely sure how accessible those sources would have been or are. But the book is as much, or if not more, reliant on British sources, which annoyed me. I also have The Last Days of the Ottoman Empire by Ryan Gingerus, which covers the same topic, although the book goes a little bit further into the past with the beginning of the 19th century and the attempts to reform the Ottoman Empire to make it more like the European colonial empires. Inglorious Empire, What the British Did to India by Shashi Tharoor. So this is a magnificent indictment of the British Empire in India and what the British did to India. Really enjoyed this book. Lost Kingdom, a history of Russian nationalism from Ivan the Great to Vladimir Putin by Serhiy Plokhy. Greece, Biography of a Modern Nation by Roderick Beaton. So this is a history of Greece from its revolution in the 1820s to the present. And really good book. I quite enjoyed it when I read it a few years ago. I'm not entirely sure where I bought it from, though. Did I buy it from Book Depository? Or did I buy it from Amazon here in the US? Because this is an orange spine penguin book. And I pair out, and every year, for the last few years, I've been seeing this book in the University of Chicago's big yearly sale catalogs. I'm like, is there a separate American edition put out by the University of Chicago Press or one of its affiliate presses or presses that it distributes for? I don't know. It's kind of bugging me. Frederick the Great, King of Prussia by Tim Blaney. So this is a biography of Frederick the Great. Really need to get to it at some point. Same can be said of Iron Kingdom, The Rise and Downfall of Prussia, 1600 to 1947 by Christopher Clark. So this is a big history of Prussia. Slightly different in look to the other Penguin books I have on the shelf. This is Stony the Road, Reconstruction, White Supremacy, and the Rise of Jim Crow by Henry Louis Gates, Jr. So this is the story of how, in the aftermath of the American Civil War, America became increasingly more racist, to where Jim Crow could exist, and where Northern politicians turned away from the earlier push for civil rights. Fascinating book, also a bit infuriating in seeing how this process played out. Moving away from Penguin, this is The Triumph of the Moon, A History of Modern Pagan Witchcraft by Ronald Hutton. So this is a history of Wicca, which is a religion created in the 1930s with inspiration drawn from 19th century interpretations of Celtic and non-Christian European beliefs, and tracking the history of this religion to the present. It's a pretty good book. I quite enjoyed reading it. It's a bit dense, and at points academic, but I enjoyed it. I also have The Witch, A History of Fear from Ancient Times to the Present, also by Ronald Hutton. So this is a study of the witch throughout history. It is very dense, very academic, and I'm very surprised I managed to read it a few years ago. Moving on to Venice. City of Fortune, How Venice Won and Lost a Naval Empire by Roger Crowley. La Serenissima, The Story of Venice by Jonathan Keats. So this is the first of the Head of Zeus section of this shelf. So this is the history of Venice. I have two books by Paul Kenyon, Dictatorland, The Men Who Stole Africa. So this is a number of mini biographies of various African dictators, including Mobutu Sese Seko, Robert Mugabe, Muammar Gaddafi, and it starts, and it looks at how these various dictators came to power, what resources they were after, and how they robbed their countries blind. Children of the Night The Strange and Epic Story of Modern Romania. So this is a history of 20th century Romania, perhaps late 20th century Romania during the Ceausescu years and after communism. The Burgundians, a Vanished Empire, a history of 1,111 years in one day, by Bart van Loo, and translated by Nancy Forrest Flyer. So this is a history of the Burgundians, who were European people between what is now France and Germany, I think. Although the sort of territory called Burgundy, I think, tended to move around during the centuries, if I'm not mistaken. And finally, the last book on this shelf, The Dark Queens, a gripping tale of power and ambition and murderous revelry in early medieval France by Shelley Puhack. So this is a dual competing biography of two queens. Brunhilde, who was a Visigothic princess from Spain, who married one of the three kings of what is now France and Germany. Her longtime rival was a sister-in-law named Fredegund, who was of significantly less social stature initially, but worked her way to becoming a rival queen of Brunhilde's, and it's their story of their conflict and the conflict of their husbands and other brother and their children and grandchildren. Really good. I think, did I read this last year? This might have been one of the 7 histories I read last year and liked. So, that concludes this penultimate shelf of the history section of my 2025 library tour. Tomorrow will be the grand finale, which will be a shelf and 2 books on the 4th shelf of this side of the bookcase. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.